So it's great to see everybody for the January Superintendent's Roundtable for the Arizona Rural Schools Association. My name is Melissa Sadorf. I am the Executive Director for the association, and it's great to be in this new role and have a lot of exciting things coming up in the next few months that we're rolling out. We'll talk a little bit about what some of those things are toward the end of our time together today. But I would like to introduce my co-host, Sean Rickert. You want to say a few words this morning?
Sure. Good morning. Glad you're able to join us. This is, as always, this is an opportunity for rural educational leaders to come together and talk about the issues that affect us in our effort to provide a quality education to all children. And I'm glad to see so many familiar faces. Looking forward to hearing from our two guests today. Remember, that this works best when you participate,
And I'd also like to introduce our policy expert, Diane Smith. Diane, do you want to say a few words? I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, thanks. Just good morning and glad to see you all. And this gives me an opportunity to hear directly from you all. So I appreciate your input.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Well, we are, without further ado, going to have our guest of the hour kick it off. There is some great conversation to be had around some of the literacy expectations that literacy endorsement requirement. And Bruce and Linda are here from the department to ensure that we have a full understanding of the expectations and guidelines, as well as timeframes for ensuring that things are rolled out. And as always, as Sean pointed out, we want this to be a conversation. So as they move forward through their slides and their presentation, do feel free to raise your virtual hand, unmute, ask questions, or use the chat so that we're able to ensure that you have answers to the questions that you might have around their presentation. So Bruce and Linda, if you would both like to introduce yourselves, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, let me share my screen here. So thank you so much for having us today. We appreciate the time that you are affording us to come talk to you about the K-5 literacy endorsement. So my name is Linda Burrows, and I'm the Deputy Associate Superintendent over Academic Standards here at the Department of Ed. And I'll let Bruce introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Bruce Duplantier. I'm the Deputy Associate Superintendent over Educator Preparation and Certification, as well as the Recruitment and Retention Team. I've been at the agency since 2015 and watched lots of rules go through. We can go to the next slide. And this is just one that we helped support, I guess would be the way to say it, make it as logical as we could. As you know, the legislation passed a couple of years ago now, requiring the science of reading, not just phonics as it used to be in the elementary prep programs, but the science of reading that includes phonics, as well as the second reading class, which is on assessment and differentiation, including the students with dyslexia. That was a requirement actually prior to a couple of years ago, but now it got a little more formalized and also required an endorsement. And so the endorsement will be required for all K-5 educators that teach English language arts. And so that includes early childhood educators, obviously elementary, middle grades, or even special education teachers, again, who provide the services in K-5 for teaching English language arts. Who doesn't need this would be folks who already hold that might be in that role and already hold a reading K-8 or a reading K-12 or a reading specialist endorsement. So those folks don't need to, they already have a kind of above and beyond the requirements for the literacy endorsement. We'll do the next slide. And so the basic requirements, this was really, forefront in the legislation, and this probably most applies to folks newly coming out of ed prep or newly coming into the field. So this is just the basic requirements. And again, it's number 1 and number 2 are those 2 classes I just mentioned. And by the way, ed prep had to adjust by August of 2022. So this coursework is in all ed prep programs for elementary, early childhood, and those folks. It may or may not be in the SPED ed prep, but I know it's being offered and those folks are being advised. But it is the two classes. That first class used to be phonics. Now it's the science of reading, including phonics. So it's expanded and it's more robust. And then the second class had already been required as well. And that's on the assessment and adjusting instruction, including meeting kiddos' needs with dyslexia. And then the other addition is number 3, that they need to pass the Foundations of Reading exam. That exam is out of Massachusetts. It's got a pretty long track record, a really good pass rate. And so the state adopted that with the same cut score that was happening nationally. And by the way, and I think Linda will talk about this too, we'll remind you again, the first attempt for Arizona folks is free. That was funded out of Governor Ducey's office. And there's plenty of money there. So the first attempt on the Foundations of Reading for anybody in Arizona is free. The next set of requirements we lovingly refer to as option B and C, and that's for the experienced educators. So the top part is you or your administration, principals, the like, anybody evaluating the teacher sees that they have the skills. It's detailed there. And so the LEA would verify that they have those skills. And then they also need to couple it with a second piece to meet the requirement. So this option, both of these options don't require any training because that first paragraph and 3 bullets is that they have those skills, that you have already observed that they have those skills. But then they need either one of the bottom ones. They either need the Foundations of Reading exam, or they need to have 3 consecutive years of 90% of all their FAY students proficient in ELA. How we're going to accomplish this is that the LEAs are going to verify that information, but be advised at this point, we can ask for the backup, the sanity check. We can verify that information. And the reason why that's important is that I did have a principal kind of go around their HR department and verify their whole staff. The issue is their whole staff hadn't been at that campus, for half of them, for more than a year, and certainly didn't have the time. And so we now have an ethical issue. And so the other day I suggested to another group we were meeting with that you make sure that you have the systems in place. A lot of the HR folks are the ones that would like to sign off on this because they can verify that rather than a principal signing off. But whatever system you put in place. And I see Sean's hand up.
So when you say that, students are proficient on the English language arts portion, what's the cut score? I mean, what's, where are we saying proficiency lies? Because if you look at the statewide average, only 35% of students, are considered proficient. So that's a pretty, above and beyond kind of a threshold. Say 90% of students or 90% of an educator's kids are proficient.
I agree, and I'll probably defer to Linda, although I was on the planning team. And again, the notion of this effort is to move literacy instruction forward. It's to get the best practices of the science of reading in there. And so it is to move it forward. And so that's why I think that came through legislative, that kind of came at the 12th hour on the bill. But was to give a path for experienced educators if they were that good without the most recent training. But Linda can speak to it more eloquently than I can, I'm sure.
Correct. It really is the idea of providing those experienced educators that are successful in what they're doing with their reading instruction in the classroom that is demonstrated on the AASA exam, that they have an option where they do not need to then take those 2 45-hour segments of the coursework in order to get the credential, get the endorsement.
So it's intended to be an exceptionally high bar, is what you're saying?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And to Bruce's point, that's the, like you said, we have such a low number of kiddos that are meeting that proficiency level now. The idea of this endorsement is to get more educators really well versed in the science of reading so that our scores do move up as more teachers use those principles and those foundations in their classroom in effective ways.
Okay, but when the state defines proficient as being students that are above the 60th percentile, I mean, even the NAEP guidelines say, okay, those are students that are on track for, Ivy League college admission, there's a disconnect there between the notion of getting kids, on grade level, they're able to do the work that they should be doing as a 5th grader or as a 6th grader, and and the achievement of proficiency. Well, so for a teacher in the classroom dealing with 25, 30 kids, suggesting that they should be getting 90% of their children above the 60th percentile seems, like I said, that's a really heavy lift. And you could have a teacher who's definitely understands how to teach reading and is a successful and highly effective reading teacher who doesn't achieve that threshold. So that's all I, wanted to point out, is that that's a very high bar. And if that's what was intended, was for it to be a very high bar, then, which almost nobody will access, then let's make it clear. But when you've got people who feel like, oh, okay, well, this is just something that, the school can verify and, and get around. That's all I'm saying.
So
Fair enough.
I would say we've got a little bit more information
Okay.
around some caveats, although there is 2 routes here, right? So if you have an experienced educator that you as a system feel they meet the top part, but they don't meet the FAY 90%, then they can sit for the Foundations of Reading exam, which the first attempt is free. And if they've got that, then they've got this endorsement. And that avoids the training. The other route is the training and the assessment. So we can go one slide forward, because I know, Linda, you're going to talk about you're probably going to address Shanna's question, which is assessments at other grade levels. So we'll kind of leave that for that slide. This is, because I'm almost done with my part and then I turn it over to her, but this is the when, right? And so the when is, this isn't like old SEI where the agency put a deficiency on certificates and expired them. We wanted to avoid making this, originally the legislation was going to come out where this was a requirement for the elementary certificate. And I thought, well, that's going to exacerbate another assessment on top of the 3. And so that's why we went the endorsement route. And we also are not making this a deficiency on the certificate. The certification is not going to be impacted. Their primary certificate, their holder certificate, is not going to be impacted by this. This puts the gatekeeping on the LEA. And so the LEA needs to start looking at this on August 1st of 2025. I know a lot of people already are. However, on August 1st, 2025, they either need to meet the requirements, or if they don't, they have 3 years to do that. And that bottom gold box talks about folks that get certified after August 1st, and basically they have 3 years. So down the road, if we're in 2026 and somebody comes out of ed prep, or somebody comes in with a new certificate from out of state, is an elementary, they have 3 years to obtain that endorsement. But again, it's not going to impact their primary certificate as a deficiency and suspending their certificate. It is on the LEA to be the gatekeeper of this. Go on to the next slide. This is where
So,
I ended off.
like Bruce had mentioned, we do have multiple ways in which educators can meet the needs of this. So to your point, Sean, if an educator can't meet that high bar, like Bruce said, there are other ways to do it. We have free courses that are available to educators. We've varied the courses so that way it's not, some of them are in person, some of them are asynchronous. So it really can meet the needs of when the educator has the time to take the courses to meet that requirement. It also is the Foundation of Reading exam gets your first attempt for free, paid for by through funding that was secured through Governor Ducey's office years ago. And then we're also looking at ways to waive like application fees and endorsements that way. The courses that we have are the biggest one that we're really working on, and I'm really excited to say it's going live tomorrow, is the Pathways to Proficient Reading courses. So these are free courses that we in Academic Standards have secured and created through Ames Pathways to provide the science of reading instruction that is needed. And so we've secured right now 250 licenses, and we're in the process of securing more licenses that we can have educators do. And essentially, educators have a full year to complete all of the courses. And there's an A course and there's a B course. And when they complete that, that will meet the requirements for this endorsement. Also, many educators, and I know a lot of LEAs, have chosen to use some of their ESSER funds for the Lexia letters trainings that districts are offering. And so that's another way that you can use those and have used those ESSER funds to create professional learning for your educators to meet that requirement. And then last, we do on our website have a list of approved courses that meet all or some of the requirements for this endorsement. And so those come with, sometimes they're courses that educators can take that can also help them maybe move over on the salary scale if they want to take like a university course. All of those are approved and on our website that educators can use and look at. Anything I missed, Bruce?
Just some stuff in the comments. How many hours does it take to complete the course?
So it's set up to be the equivalent of the 90 hours. So course A is 45 hours, and then course B would be another 45 hours.
Do they need an ADE Connect login to access the course and ALP and the ALP?
Not an ADE Connect login, but they need to be able to access APLD. I always get the two. Yeah, I think it's APLD.
Okay.
Yeah, that one. You just need an account to get into there, and educators can sign up and start taking the courses at their leisure.
You anticipate future funding to support more than the initial 250?
So right now we've secured 250. We have more funding to add more licenses. So we are in the process, now that we've got the system up and running, because we had to go through the whole procurement process. We had to get the courses approved through our IT team. Now that everything is done and complete, now we just have to go through the procurement to add more courses. So we will be doing that. We were given roughly $1 million to buy courses and to provide training for teachers in this. And so we'll be using all of those funds to then purchase more licenses. And we are hopeful that the legislature will appropriate that same amount for next year. But of course, nothing is guaranteed. So right now we have been given $1 million to secure licenses, and we've used about a third of that to secure 250 licenses. And so we're hoping to get many more for educators.
Do teachers need to take the reading exam if they take the training, or is it one or the other? And I would say that they need to take the exam because then you'd be meeting option A.
Correct.
The training and the exam.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one was from Sean as well. Does anybody see this as an additional straw on the teachers' backs that will lead to an increased numbers exiting the profession?
So the way the 90 hours is deemed, in a way you see that 90 hours and it does seem like it's an undue burden, but given the fact that the educators have so many years to do this, it doesn't end up being like a huge amount of burden because teachers already have to do so much professional learning as it is. So instead, what we're encouraging from the department is to use your professional learning time on getting your elementary teachers, giving them that time to take these trainings and do these courses, and then it's less of a burden.
And then I've heard a little bit, I'm really not in this lane of the literacy other than, the requirements, obviously, but I have heard a little bit of the letters. Some folks can do letters and all that's a big lift. And I think it's a multi-year, but the first year they're actually qualified for the endorsement. But I think my wife has also heard in the field that the training is that good that they're empowered and rejuvenated in their classroom because they're that much more effective. And so I get it. But it's good stuff.
Yeah, it is one of those things that it does seem like a lot, but yet I have not heard a single complaint from anyone that has taken the letters training and completed the letters training. We do offer some free letters training for administrators, and that is just a 1-year commitment. And we do have some slots still available for that we had procured through ESSER funding. And so I would highly recommend for principals or administrators or district people, district curriculum people, to take that 1-year letters training. It's a little less intensive than the other one, but that does also give you that viewpoint of what exactly is being asked of and required by your educators, also to help inform you of what you should see when you go into the classroom and start to evaluate the teachers, using those science of reading principles and skills in their classrooms.
If we just want to put up the next slide, there was another one from Melissa. This would be a concern that it is an unfunded mandate. Just throw that out there. If the future funding is not secured, has that been discussed?
So as far as an unfunded mandate that we have, and Bruce can speak to the number of exams that we have free for educators to take for the first one, that definitely has a lot. I mean, I think it's secure in that way for many educators to take the test. We plan to use and develop, and we've started to develop it, but just obviously takes time, that if we don't secure that funding for those free AIMS pathways courses that we have right now, we're planning on developing our own. So that way, again, it's not a financial burden to educators.
And the exam, I think there was $1 million or more put into that, and it hasn't even started to have been used. I mean, it's been a trickle, so it's kind of banked in there, and we'll kind of go from there. Is my understanding.
So we do have some frequently asked questions that we've been getting a lot at the agency. So the first one is, what if I teach K2? What can I use for the waiver? And if you teach K2, you can show your growth and proficiency through any of your approved Mauer screeners. So many schools use DIBELS. You can use DIBELS score as that for that waiver that we spoke to earlier, or take the foundations exam instead of doing the training. A lot of people hear that they have to take letters training, and that's not the case. Letters is just really the gold standard, I would say, in science of reading training. And so that's why many state agencies, including ADE, have gone to it and recommend it, but it's definitely not the only thing that educators can do. They can do a wide variety of courses, and we do have those all listed on our website for educators to select and choose from. And then for the last one, how many attempts do I have to pass the test? ADE will pay for the first attempt for free, and then after that, it's up to the educator to pay for the test, and you can take it, I believe, Bruce, as many times as you need to pass it. So there's no limit as to how many times you take it. It's just, if after the first one, then the expense is on the educator then.
And there's a great question from Robbie. I know you can't see the chat because you're sharing your screen. And I think you can speak to this. I know Sean Ross could speak to this too. And do we have data from those that have had the training and track student proficiency scores compared to those that haven't taken training to validate the effectiveness and the priority for the training? We're always looking for the most effective strategies, but supporting these initiatives through proven results and data validation is important to validation of the commitment. I don't know if you want to talk about the background in the states that are doing this and that type of thing.
So this really, all of this came from and stemmed from what ended up happening in Mississippi. So Mississippi for years was always the worst in reading scores, and everybody would say, oh well, thank God for Mississippi because we're not 50th, right? Or so what Mississippi did was this systemic approach to fixing their reading scores, and they did this through a number of different ways. One, they did a K-5 literacy endorsement that was required of their educators. They also did a coaching model, which Arizona has started to do. And we're starting with the lowest 10% schools based on the AASA exam, where you have funding basically for literacy coaches in your school. And then other things that we're doing as far as our trainings, also focused on the science of reading, and there are all these like components to it. Arizona is not doing, they're doing a lot of them, but we're still in that process of completing it. It's not quite as robust as Mississippi's, but what we are starting to see are some real gains in evidence that doing the science of reading, as well as our early literacy coaching initiative that we have, is showing significant numbers and change in some of those very low districts. For example, I know our early literacy, foundational literacy coaching coordinator has, right now we've got 13 coaches and we have funding for 25. And so we're in the process of opening up that grant for next year. And with that, that pays for the coaches, and it's very clear these individuals are coaching. They're not covering as test coordinators. They're not covering for substitutes. Their real goal and only goal is to coach teachers in the science of reading and in evidence-based best practices for literacy. And school districts like Ganado has had huge growth so far, just in the first year that we've seen this coaching model go out. But it is something that their administrators took the Lexia training, the 1-year training. They're really committed to, the coaches are truly coaches working in the classroom with those literacy teachers. They're giving those early literacy teachers time and training, so that way they make sure that they're doing the right and proper things based on those evidence. And we are starting to see some preliminary data of that really making a difference in their reading scores and seeing some pretty remarkable results.
And this is bouncing around. Some people responded, but I'll just throw it out there anyway to have you speak to it. Any chance ADE will travel to provide letters training to rural locations or online options only? Question.
So the letters training that we've recommended is mostly what districts have used through their ESSER funds that were allocated to districts. So ADE is not providing letters training in that way. We are doing the online training, so that way we can reach as many educators as possible. I have a whole team of ELA specialists and Mauer specialists that are more than willing to come out and do training for your schools and to help with your schools. But those kinds of things are not necessarily the coursework that is required for this endorsement, but we are more than happy to come out and do trainings. If you have something that is specific, we can address those needs as you have them. You just need to ask and let us know and get you scheduled.
First, Linda, this is Cole Young from
Yeah.
Mojave Valley. Hey, I just wanted to reach out and not to pile on when it comes to what Sean was talking about earlier, but when we start talking about proficiencies, I always link that to zip codes. And when we talk about 90% proficiencies, and then we want to say huge growth out of Ganado based on, we devalue teachers when they have students that show up that don't have proficiencies, but they're moving them a year and a half. And then we say, sorry, but you don't have 90% proficient, so we're not going to honor that piece. I think it's a takeaway that you have to start talking about. If the State Board of Education is saying that the report card, 50% of it lies in SGT and SGP, and I just got off of Title I where they're not honoring that, it's only proficiencies. I really feel like we create a division between rural schools and schools. We have haves and have-nots. And that 90% it sticks in my craw.
This won't make you feel any better, but I'll be honest. I mean, the experienced teacher stuff wasn't in there at all. I mean, across what was being proposed and was everybody gets the training and everybody takes the exam. And so that was, we didn't create that. We didn't have a hand in that. That came legislatively and lobbyist.
I get it. It just you know, as we were talking earlier, when you talk about retention and attraction of staff and you add one more layer when it comes to just being able to staff our schools appropriately with certified people, do we continue as a state to put barriers in the way? We don't have a teacher shortage. We have a shortage of people who want to do it.
Absolutely.
This is Jamie Festa from Lake Havasu. I apologize if this question was asked. I got on late. Is ADE providing funding for letters in the future, or was this the last year? And I know it's a 2-year process, because while the funding was great and my teachers, we got over the amount of teachers, it's not all of my teachers, and I would like them to all do it.
So I know that letters training, like it all came from ESSER funds, and those funds unfortunately are going away. We do have, like we had mentioned, we had been budgeted through Bruce's department to provide the exam for everybody. And this past year, the state legislature did give us money that we could use to provide training. And that's where we've created those free courses that it's not letters, but they're fabulous courses, and they meet the standard for what is needed. And so we have secured 250 slots. We are adding more slots. And so we're going to max out those funds and use all of those funds. So that way we have as many spots to offer for educators. I am hopeful that if we can demonstrate, hey, look, there's this need for this funding to pay for teachers, that the legislature will award those funds again for next fiscal year, but there's nothing is guaranteed, because that's obviously all dictated by the legislature.
I would love to see, and I know the other PD is lovely, but letters is the gold standard, and it is what is changing practice and changing minds. I would much rather see at the county level some sort of train the trainer program and funding for that, because we can then carry that out in our communities away at a much lower cost. I hate that we're going to do this other thing instead of the gold standard. If we want science of reading implemented, like, let's do it right. And that's like what, to me, I can get behind, rather than a mandate to be compliant.
Yeah, no. So definitely please know that the Ames Pathways courses that we have online are amazing and really, really well done. It's not letters, but it's a really, really good and effective alternative for online. That being said, we do have some letters trainings and licenses left. So what we're trying to do, to your point, Jamie, is to create almost like a regional hub of a train the trainer, where using those licenses, we would have a trainer in the northern part of Arizona. We'd have someone in the West Valley of Phoenix, someone in the East Valley of Phoenix, cohorts, basically a North Arizona cohort, a West Valley cohort, an East Valley cohort, and then a Southern Arizona cohort. And so what we're in the process of doing is using those licenses for Lexia to create a train the trainer model that we can do regionally. And so we are working on that, because again, we don't want to let any of those funds revert back to the federal government. We want to use those. And so we do have those licenses. So we have, we're in the process of creating that, and should get information out to the field for people that want to do that, be that train the trainer. Because again, that is a commitment, right? You're committing obviously to that Lexia, those letters training, but then the whole premise of that is then you take that and then go back to where you are at and use that with your other educators.
Hello, this is Shanna. I do have a question. Is the letters worth if you go through the whole series, is it worth 6 credit hours? So it'll cover so if somebody takes the complete course of letters, check, that's all they have to do. And then they have to send that certificate into ADE.
It actually, the letters training as it covers more than what is required by the endorsement.
And then a person would just take their certificate that's signed off. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Linda, I had a question in the chat, but I'll just ask it. The train the trainer model that you're looking at doing with 4 people that will be responsible for the state, 2 of those people in Maricopa. And I understand that that's where most of your teachers that work in schools are going to be, is in that area. But 2 people for the rest of the state seems like not enough.
Well, it's not 2 people, that's just the area, those would be cohorts. So we look to have, I believe, 25 to 35 people in each of those cohorts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you approached the county school superintendents to potentially run through their offices those trainings?
yet.
That might be a way to, especially with our rural communities, get to the people that need those trainings.
Yeah, absolutely. I will let my Mauer team and ELA team know that.
I have a question about the letters training, and I don't know if you'll be able to answer, but we have virtual trainings about every other month, but then we also have the online platform for the certificate completion. Will either of those options work if you prove that you participated in the every other month session? Will that meet the requirements for training, or do you need to have the certificates from the online portal completed?
Bruce, that's probably for you.
Yeah, so the cert staff is looking for the 45 clock, if it's training, that it's approved training, and it's 45 clock hours for the science of reading, including phonics, and it's 45 clock hours for the other one. So yeah, we need those details to be submitted with the application to meet that requirement.
I have another question, and maybe I missed this, maybe you said at the beginning, but so this letters would also cover the dyslexia, correct?
You know what? That's a really good question. I'm not sure of
Would
that.
be- So I hope it does, and I hope somebody can find that answer, because if it doesn't, then I have to ask multiple people on my little small campus to go get another course. So
No,
does-
if you have the dyslexia training, that counts for this endorsement. If you're that dyslexia designee and you've gone through that training process, you don't need to do the K-5 literacy endorsement.
The letters training meets the dyslexia requirements.
Okay. I assumed it did. Thanks, Kristen.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for our guests? This was a great conversation. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Angela, go ahead.
I just want to add one thing. So we wrote with the county a early literacy grant, and we did do letters. My teachers did enjoy it, but I don't think they would have enjoyed it without an actual human to facilitate that. But I was able to, out of that grant, pay them $800 for the first, 4 sections, and then $800 for the next 4 sections. And that made my teachers a lot happier than just being like, you got to do this. So just food for thought.
No, that's a good point. So that early literacy grant or ELG grant does provide a lot of funding that you can use to do that kind of training and do things to make it more amenable to your teachers in that way. So thank you for pointing that out.
Any other questions, comments, concerns that you'd like to surface? Steve, go ahead.
I just think it's kind of ridiculous if they go through that 90 hours, then you're going to make them take a test. It's like, really, they just completed the 90 hours. They do have their degree. They do have their certificate. What's one more test, really? But just my comment.
I thought it was one or the other.
No,
No.
it's both.
It's
Yeah,
both.
it's either option A, option B, or option C. So option A is the training route with the exam. B and C are the experienced educator options.
You know what that tells you?
Right. So if I have all my teachers that are very experienced, right, 15 plus years, they go past the exam, they're done.
And you verify that they have the science of reading skills and those 3 bullets, yeah.
I just have to sign off as administrator saying that okay. But never known a teacher who has 90% passing rate, so.
Well, but again, look at the requirements. Don't mix requirements. And so One of the options is, and I'll pull up my slide deck on my screen so I can see.
Oh, here I can do it.
Yeah.
Let's see here.
People like to mix and match, and then that's when we get hurt feelings and all kinds of stuff. And so one of the options is that you are verifying that they provide literacy instruction, you have done classroom observations, and they have student achievement data across subgroups using evidence, that they effectively teach the foundation of reading skills. They provide instruction and interventions, right? That is one piece. You pair that under option B with one of the two of the bottoms. I don't remember what order we're in, but either option B is the top and the first one on the bottom, which is student achievement data 90%. And the other option is the top with the foundations of reading. So if you've got a teacher that you think you are going to verify meets the top, and you have them sit for the foundations of reading and they pass, then that meets the requirement. If they're going to go the training route, it's the training with the exam.
Yeah, we should add an or in here.
Well, that's why it says either of the following, but there we go.
Any other questions? Or points of clarification? And if they do, after this session is over, have any questions, Bruce and Linda's emails are both in the chat, so do feel free, and they want you to ask questions to make sure that you understand what's going on with this requirement. So please do feel free to reach out to them, and I know that they'll get back with you.
Happy to support.
Yeah.
Yes. Happy to help.
And Melissa, you're gonna also send out the PowerPoint, correct?
I am. If Bruce or Linda, either one of you, if you don't mind sending it to me, I'll make sure that it goes out to membership so that they have that as well to refer back to, which I know will be helpful for them.
Will do.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you both for a lively discussion and good information, and it's timely because I know that it's all on our radar. So I really appreciate you taking the time to spend 45 minutes with us this morning going through this information. So
Thanks for making space for us and allowing us to do this to get the info out. Thank you.
Thank
and
you.
you're welcome to stay if you would like to, but we'll let you out early for good behavior. For those of you that are going to stay with us, we have a couple of other things just to bring to the table. I know that there are some topics around the bills that are in session right now. If you have any questions about those, we have some school report card attestation concerns that I know were brought up earlier at ASA. There is a personal finance bill that is in play, and we'd like to get some of your thoughts around that potentially being a requirement. We definitely want to bring on to your radar the public comment for the end of useful life for facilities that School Facilities Board has out right now. The SFOB is asking for public comment, and Robbie is on the table today. So Robbie, you want to unmute and talk a little bit about what's going on with that particular public comment?
DAIGLE.
Hey, Steve, do it yourself. There you go. Somebody's got to always be in charge of Steve on these calls. So, yeah. So we have so we have public comment.
The governor is coming to Superior on Friday. So if there's anything you'd like me to ask Robbie, I'll get to her. All right. I'll ask her for you. So
thanks, Steve. So public comment was due yesterday for end of life facility use of facilities. So if you have a facility in your building or in your district that is a school student focus that is getting near the end of life, and the concept of using industry standards to the point where you're going to have to invest 30, 40, 50% more to upgrade, building renewal, whatever that might be. versus replace, repair, or redesign, then that's really what we're focused on for end of life facility use. So if you're in that situation, there's going to be more discussion, but we did write a public comment to the policy that they are going to adopt, or they're going to present to the school facility board. And really the feedback for us was that we want to make sure we don't lose space. So one of the things that happens when you have end of life facilities is they say, well, you can put those kids in other facilities because you have some capacity for, 50 or 60, 100 more kids somewhere else, because your junior high has 350 kids on it, but it's really built for 800 kids. Well, the reality is, as you go to the junior high and it looks like it's at full capacity with 350 kids, you have to redesign space for that. So that's a major aspect of this, that we don't get caught up into, okay, they're going to retire a building, they're going to end of life a building, and then you lose that space. That was important. A second element was that they use qualified evaluators to determine end of life facilities. So right now, the policy states that they'll use the division staff to do so. Well, it needs to be a non-biased, it needs to be structural engineers, it needs to be an architect, it needs to be somebody third party to say, yeah, you should not invest in this building any longer. And it would be more prudent for state dollars and local property tax payers and so forth, that you would be able to replace that building, redesign that building, rebuild that building. I think those were really the main things that we focused with our public comment. But there is a board meeting on February 7th that will be a public comment as well. That's when they're going to address the adoption of these policies, or at least the review of these policies. So I encourage you to, if you can get online, and if you have a facility like that, then you have a stake in the game. And now is the time. We do not have these policies. This has never been approached. There are actually two spectrums. There's the new school facility policy, and then there's the end of useful life policy. So they're taking both sides. And I think rural school systems are definitely going to be in this boat. We are in it right now in our district. They're wanting to put millions of dollars into an old school that the soil is just crumbling the building. It's not going to do any good to do so. And I know rural schools deal with this more often because we're not able to bond. We don't have the capital funding and so forth. So leveraging our stories, I think, is going to be very important, because I do believe that we have the ear of the governor's office, the division, and even some legislators right now in this area. So I encourage you to get involved. Send me your information if you want to. I'm also on the MAG committee for the governor's council, that we can share your story in that avenue as well. So thanks, Melissa.
Robbie, two things. One is I'm going to be inviting Kelly to our next roundtable to see if she's able to talk through some of those concerns that rurals have. And hopefully you're able to make it. It's going to be the 28th of February. But the other thing is, there's been an interest in potentially having legislators do a tour of some of our rural school facilities to really see what's going to be in discussions around this topic for our rural communities. And if you are a school that would like to be potentially a tour destination, I would really like to know that, because I think it's important to get them out of Phoenix and into our rural communities to see exactly what it is we're talking about. You can just email me if you're interested in potentially being a part of that tour. Sean and then Shanna.
Just to let you know, Melissa, on the 28th of February, you probably won't get Callie. There's MAG meetings, and I think Rob, you and I are both on that. So
we might have to shift the date of the roundtable, and we have enough time to do that. But I really want to have her involved in the discussion. So thank you for that.
Yeah, because I think that's a hybrid meeting, if I remember right, Robbie.
It's actually at 4 o'clock at Phoenix, so she may be able
so maybe 10 o'clock will be okay
in the morning, because it'll be
I'll
Zoom.
ask her and see how that goes, and we'll make sure we put the information out to membership.
but would be tricky if I choose to attend that, or if you do, Robbie, I don't know if you're gonna attend it live, because I'll be on the road. But it doesn't matter, you just putting it out there.
Appreciate that. Thanks, Jana. John.
So I noticed that, and I'm sure Diane can, maybe speak to this too, but I noticed that on the agenda for Senate Education this afternoon, they actually are taking up the Senate Bill 1119, school district buildings demolition requirements. Have you guys looked in your efforts on this? Have you looked at that to see how, if that passed, what changes that would make? Or, is that trying to rein some of this in? I know in the past, school demolition has always been something that the charters have fought against, because there's the law that says if you've got excess space, you've got to make it available to them.